coronation fever is practically upon us. We can talk and think of almost nothing else. Meanwhile, the Duchess of York has issued a plea to the public simply to leave her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, alone, insisting he is a good man. Let's have a listen.
It's very important that people out there is to focus on what you can do to bring others a bit of joy that are in less fortunate positions than yourself. And with Prince Andrew, he's such a good man. He's a kind, good man. And I think the spotlight needs to come off him and let him get on with his life to rebuild.
Unfortunately, even if you're a member of the royal family, you don't get to direct that spotlight. You don't get to tell people what they should focus on and what they shouldn't. But Fergie's certainly doing her best. And to discuss Fergie's intervention, as well as a whole slew of fabulous royal stories, is our royal editor, Sarah Hewson. Thanks for coming in, Sarah. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me,
you know, she's very loyal. Nobody can say that the former Duchess of York isn't incredibly loyal.
Exceptionally loyal. The happiest divorced couple, as they describe themselves. She describes herself as being divorced to rather than divorced from him. I've heard her say on multiple occasions what a kind man he is, what a good father, what a good grandfather. But I think what's controversial in these comments is what she says about him being able to come out of the spotlight and get on with his life, because although he has always denied the accusations made against him, they are extremely damaging, and there'll be many who think, well, who are you to say you should just be allowed to get on with your life?
And also the question is, what kind of life is he or does she envisage his getting on with? Because obviously he can't get on with life as a member of the royal family and working royal, can't be the trade envoy or whatever he used to be, having a great time flying around the world and air miles, and he can't do that anymore. So when he just get on with his life, doing what?
Well, I mean, you say he can't, and we absolutely know that's the case right now, but you see, I think he believes that he should be able to do those things again, to be a working member of the royal family, to take on those patronages again, to have those titles again, because he has never been found guilty of anything. He settled, of course, and we're never going to know the full details of that, but he feels that he should be able to do that. And, you know, what his life is like at the moment, well, we can only
But it's interesting that she says, you know, he should be out of the spotlight. But of course, if he did return to royal duties, that's thoroughly in the spotlight. So it implies that she thinks he should be allowed to lead a quiet life out of the spotlight, which of course he is.
He is leading a quiet life.
What he's supposed to do.
He is leading a quiet life, you know, riding horses, etc., around Windsor Great Park, close to their home at Royal Lodge, which, you know, we don't know how long that's going to be their home for, if the king has his way and gets to relocate them. But, you know, as long as we keep talking about it, and this has added fuel to the fire, he's not going to be out of the spotlight.
And Fergie's been quite sort of brave and gung-ho about not having been invited to the coronation. And she's got a legitimate explanation for why she shouldn't be upset, which is she is divorced from Andrew, so she isn't kind of entitled to be there, is she?
Very pragmatic about it. I am divorced from Andrew. This is an official occasion. You can't be in, or you've got to be in or out. She's out, effectively, from these. She said, don't sit on the fence. She's very understanding about that. She did get invited to Sandringham at Christmas, but that was different. That was a family occasion, whereas this is an official occasion. But she does have a VIP ticket to the concert at Windsor on the 7th as a consolation prize, I guess.
And was she wearing a tiara in that
It
clip?
did look rather like that, didn't it?
Glinting diamond tiara, was it?
It did look like rather like that.
Unusual choice,
yes,
isn't it?
I know.
For a morning show on daytime telly.
Once a royal, always a royal, I suppose.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the pared down guest list. So a great deal made of the fact that Lady Pamela Hicks, Lord Mountbatten's daughter, hasn't been invited to the royal wedding, hasn't there? And yeah, all the newspapers covering that story.
Yes, Lady Pamela Hicks had hoped to be one of the few people to have attended the coronation of the late Queen's father, George VI, the Queen, and then Charles. But she received a telephone call on her birthday over the last couple of days from someone working for the King's office to say, we're terribly sorry, but unfortunately, you haven't made the cut. We can't have everybody. It is a much reduced guest list, 8,000 for the Queen's coronation down to some 2,000, and a much greater proportion of members of the public, ordinary people who've done extraordinary things, so British Empire medal winners, for example, who will be in that congregation.
So her daughter, India Hicks, rather feistily, I think, certainly following the path of Fergie in that upset, moi, certainly not, of course not, I'm absolutely fine with it, says, my mother isn't in the least offended.
She's absolutely fine about it. She totally understands and that she thinks it's the right thing to do.
Yes, so we have to hope that she really feels that way, don't we?
We do.
Yes, all right.
And of course, Charles was very close to her late father.
Exactly.
He was a
That's
mentor
why it's so
figure to
surprising,
her.
isn't it?
Yes, I think that this is happening a lot. There are an awful lot of people who might originally have been expected to have been invited to the coronation, titled individuals, the aristocracy, members of Parliament, for example, who are finding that they just haven't made the list this time because it is going to look very different.
Right. Let's talk about Tom Parker Bowles. Now, Tom Parker Bowles is in the most unusual position, isn't he, of being an ordinary commoner who is going to witness his mother being crowned and anointed queen. I mean, it really is not what you expect, really, when you're growing up in an ordinary family. And he's spoken out as well.
Yes, I find this fascinating, actually, what it must be like for Camilla's family now, having been through everything that they have been through since the revelations of the affair with Charles and then their mother marrying finally into the royal family, and now to be seeing her crowned at Westminster Abbey, and their children, Tom and Laura, Camilla's children, their children are going to be pages in the ceremony. But Tom Parker Bowles has been talking about the protests and the right to protest, and he has backed the right to protest. We know that the anti-monarchy campaign group Republic is asking people to come out with banners and wearing T-shirts saying "Not My King." They've had over 1,000 people who've pledged to be out on the streets of London and elsewhere on May the 6th. And Tom Parker Bowles has been asked about it, and he said, absolutely, it is their right and their freedom to do so.
And I said to you before we started the show, isn't that rather surprising? I mean, his mother's about to be crowned queen. You wouldn't think he'd say that. And you said you thought, actually, the king probably feels exactly the same.
Look, these protests have taken place for a long time. They are taking place at most engagements that they are on, the most recent one at the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey. I think the general feeling is people are allowed to protest. It's peaceful protest. It's nothing new. And they will just say, it's totally your right to have your own opinions about whether we should have a monarchy or not. And they just get on with it.
Very moving article today, very personal article, by a schoolmate at Gordonston of the King's, talking about what a dreadful time he had at school.
Yes, I found this very moving indeed. This was a contemporary of Charles's at Gordonston, and we know, and much has been written about how unhappy Charles was at Gordonston, the school that his father had been to, and was determined that Charles, albeit a very different personality, should attend. And he's talked about the merciless bullying, tipped out of his bed in his dormitory, punched and beaten in the scrum in rugby so no one could see it, that he didn't make friends. Nobody could be friends with him because you'd be seen as sucking up to Charles. And he paints a picture of an utterly miserable existence.
And he says the only person he could confide in was his police protection officer.
Police protection officer.
Who subsequently got fired.
And yet he took it and he said nothing.
Yes.
He just got on with it. But we know from subsequent interviews and books that have been written that it was a very, very, very dark time indeed for him.
And you can't help feeling very sorry for him, actually, because none of it was his fault.
A sensitive young man and a school which didn't take its pastoral responsibilities particularly seriously. It had a very much toughen you up kind of approach.
That's right, but they said that he went on an outing, didn't he? He got to go on a boat trip or something, and then they ended up in a pub, and then he ordered a cherry brandy, and then it was a national scandal,
yes.
And then the police officer, who was basically his only friend, got fired over it.
Although it did sort of amuse me slightly that the first drink that came to mind
was
cherry brandy.
Probably a favourite of the late Queen Mother's, I imagine.
The happiest bit was when he got
William and Kate out and about that in Birmingham?
Yes, they're on a visit to Birmingham today, and they have surprised a prospective customer, at an Indian restaurant in Birmingham city centre, because William picked up the phone to make a booking. I think we've got some pictures of it here.
Yes, see this is William.
So here they are. This is a family-run restaurant, Indian streetery, and William answers the phone, and
Kate's
he's trying to give
laughing her head off.
directions to the restaurant, getting much input. Here he is asking for some help, and then booking a table for them at 2:15. I wonder who on earth that person was on the end of the phone, and whether they realised then or when this footage actually emerged on social media and TV and in the newspapers, and whether they have indeed had a nice lunch, courtesy of the King. Maybe he footed the bill.
Kate's just laughing away in the background, nice. He's looking as if she's thoroughly enjoying it. And
Yes.
I think doing a really good job.
I don't think he was perhaps best at taking the bookings. Whether or not that customer makes it to the right place, we'll never know.
Sarah, thank you very much indeed.